Welcome to another episode of VNture Podcast, your weekly source of visual novel goodness. I am Emar, and together with Tauros we shall venture into another discussion about VNs. This week we have a pleasure to talk once more with a proud member of this colony, a bee which works hard for its honey. Let us continue exploring Daybreak translation, so that no hive is left behind. Welcome back, BarryBee.
Thank you. It's an honor. For those who haven't watched the latest episode, go watch it. Otherwise, I'm B. I fan translate things. I'm very tired constantly. Life is pain. But apart from that, we're doing good. We're doing good, and I'm here to answer all questions and inquiries about how cool it is to fan translate and how it's not totally the worst thing in the universe to do. The worst decision you could take. You're a visional fan. So yeah.
Oh dear. I'm sorry to hear you're so cold and tired all the time. At the very least, I do want to praise you right at the beginning for putting in so much work translating these huge visual novels for the world to enjoy. So thank you. Thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
You are part of the fan translation group Daybreak Translations. And so I wanted to ask you more about that. Like how did Daybreak Translations form?
Okay, trip back in time. It's 2018. It's early 2018. So I think it's either late 2017 December or early 2018 January. I decide to start translating Akatsuki no Goei one day because I say, oh yeah, I'm very good at Japanese now, so I can totally do this title, right? Between parentheses, doesn't know what he's doing. So yeah, that translation was a disaster, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I started working on it, and I decided to, I had to create a group to represent me. I didn't want to be Barry the translator doing the translation. So I decided, since Akatsuki no Goei, it means the Guardians of Daybreak in English, then I decided to name the group Daybreak Translations, and that was the first iteration. So I translated, let's say, half of the game, and that's when I started looking for a prospective editor. So I asked a friend of mine. Well, we don't talk anymore, but we were friends back then, and he joined the project to help me edit my horrible English because it was really very bad. And I asked another friend of mine to TLC for me if he could. He accepted. And from there onwards, we just kept gathering members. I gathered 2 more. I think it was like a QA and an image editor, right? Aliens of Gold. And we did the UI. We did most of the images. And once I finished the game, this was when Sekai Project approached us, wanting to buy the translation. And basically, you can read out the details in the blog post on the website. It's literally the first blog post on our website. But the TLDR is that the deal fell through because I decided to talk to Akabe, and Akabe wanted the translation to be done on their terms, and I didn't like it. Those terms were no swearing and 8 scenes had to be removed, and they weren't even considering a side patch release apart from the Steam All Ages. So I said, you know what? No, fuck you. So I sent them packing. And this was when I had a fallout with the team because they didn't tell me until the very last moment, but apparently it was very bad translating. And yes, they were right now that I look back on what I did. But, it was quite a shock. And it made me just give up on translating things altogether for like a couple of years until 2020. So we disbanded basically. There was a website, but I never updated it or anything. I was having a conversation with Hata then on 2020 about this translation effort, because back then we used to talk from time to time. And he said, dude, why don't you just do the team again and try again? I'm like, dude, can't you see that I shouldn't? I'm tired and stuff. And he's like, well, you should definitely try. I'll help you. And then I don't know what came through me. I said yes. And then the second iteration of Daybreak Translation started in October 2020. And that's when I reworked the website, made that post asking for help. And some of the initial members came in to help us. I think out of the I think we were 6 or 7 at the beginning, and now including myself, and there's only one. No, fake. There's 2 people left from back then, which are the hacker and one QA, and the rest are left basically. So.
Wow. Okay, so there's a few questions. One thing I want to ask you about is the whole interaction between you guys, originally as a fan translation group, and then you were approached by official company, official publisher, to buy your translation.
Yeah.
And, for anyone who's unaware, is that a fairly common occurrence? Is that, the goal, or did you start off just wanting to make a fan translation for all the fans who wanted to read the VN?
I mean, what I wanted by doing this translation actually was, I was very naive, but back then I thought maybe this could lead up to me being hired by Akabe to do their works, because that was what I wanted at the beginning. I wanted to be some sort of Akabe in-house translator, being able to tell them, hey, I could translate your games for you, and that was the initial goal at the beginning. But that, after I knew what kind of company I was dealing with, then I quickly gave up on the idea. I mean, I wouldn't say being approached is normal. I'd say I've been really unlucky as well with the companies approaching me, because the only company that has I've had several, right? But the company that has approached me consistently for 2 or 3 works that I've done is Sekai Project, and all of those times it ended up badly in some way or another.
Ended up badly in terms of workload for yourself, or financially badly, or?
No, it's just, look, the way they deal with fan translators in general, they don't do it anymore, right? But back then, when they used to be more active with this stuff, they were not very good at dealing with people like me, right? I get it. You are sometimes bound by contractual agreements, that kind of stuff. But there's a difference between being faithful to your contracts and your Japanese, the Japanese counterpart, and then you need to understand that I'm a person and that I deserve a minimum of respect, right? You cannot treat me like trash just because I'm supposedly, quote unquote, doing something illegal and I shouldn't even be doing it in the first place, but they're doing me a favor by buying it for me. That's not how it works. They thought money would solve the issues of like me being an ass and not wanting them to touch my work or change things. But in the end, money wasn't even the factor, They actually offered me quite a lot of money for the first game. I still remember it was, what was it, like 30 something $1,000 for the first game. Like it was big cash, right? And I told them no, because I didn't want them to butcher the game into like an 8 scene-less thing. And sure, I could have released the patch illegally through like websites and other parts, but I don't want to. It's just too much effort. Like, why would anyone who doesn't know anything about visual novels go out of their way to download a patch in God knows where, like, it's too much effort. So no. I would just say I'm unlucky. If you happen to be approached, which is unlikely nowadays, I'd say it's very unlikely. In fact, almost impossible. But if you are approached, then just be respectful. And if you find like the terms are acceptable, then by all means, continue the talks, because, it's always good to have the experience of dealing with companies. But overall, I thought, I don't know, I had to deal with Sekai with this release. With this game in particular, and I told them that I wanted to deal with Akabe and not Sekai, and then I had to deal with Akabe, which was arguably worse, because Akabe, as I'm already used to dealing with Japanese companies because my real life job is related to that, but basically they don't understand anything about what the Westerners prefer, right? They don't even care to attempt, right? And I felt like I was wasting my time talking to them, because they were like, well, things are going to be done this way, and that's the only way that's going to move forward. And then we had the issue where Sekai Project was telling them one thing, and then I was telling them another thing, because there was miscommunication between us. Because again, Sekai Project would not talk to us, They would just tell us, oh yeah, just talk to Akabe, bro, and just you deal with it. No communication in between. So obviously there was dissonance between the 3 parties involved, and it ended up being a disaster. TLDR.
Goodness, that sounds awful.
Yeah. Pair that with the fact that I also got approached by Salt Press, and I also got approached by Jast. So it's just, it's complicated. Like, I think every company well, not every company, but almost every company has approached Alcabe about this game at some point. Let's just put it that way. And it's at least every company, as in the classic Sekai, Soulpress is defunct now, but Soulpress back then, Manga Gamer no, and the new ones obviously not. So there you go. That's how it went off.
There's so much to unpack, but I have 2 questions from everything you said so far. First, your opinion when it comes to fan translations, the best of your ability. How often, or maybe how common it is within the fan translator to have as much integrity as you did when you were faced with the, let's call it, sellout option? Because you stuck to your roots, you stuck to your ground, you said, no, I'm not going to butcher it. But is that common? Or there's more, it's more common for people
actually,
just relent?
I'm sorry, can we make a pause? I'm being called by my parents right now. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, yeah, of course.
Sure. If you want me to rephrase the question, I was wondering how common it is to the best of your ability in other fan translators or fan translator groups to stick to their guns and have that approach. No, I'm not going to follow your guidelines. I want the game be in the best possible state.
It has happened a couple of times that I've seen and has been made public. Although, honestly, I wouldn't even criticize someone who sells out, or, well, we all call it selling out, right? But it's basically someone who sells their work for money. Because in the end, everyone has different aspirations and ways they see their games or the work they put into something, right? So I have my own values and people have other values, right? So it depends, right? I'm not gonna criticize you if you sell out. However, it is also true that if you receive donations and then you sell out, like for example, the Tokeija Keno Ley line group, for example, then obviously you are trash and you deserve horrible things to be done to you. But taking that aside, do with your work whatever you want, as long as you are initially doing it for free, right? The issue is when you take donations, like Clover Days team at the beginning, Tokeija Keno line team. I can't think of any others, to be honest. Those 2 in particular stand out to me because they're the ones I know. So.
Also, when in your case you were offered the funds from Jast or from Akebisoft or whoever, I'm assuming that I'm assuming that 30,000 plus would have had to been split by all of the members who worked on your project, right?
Yeah, but the pay was really good. Like for standards of translation, like it was around 0.03 something cents per character, which was, in my opinion, it was really high, especially for the length of the game. It was really, really high. Like the pay was good, right? It's akin to nowadays standards, right? Or close to nowadays standards. I'd say it's even above average still. It's above average. Yeah, let's put it that way. It's above average because the standard is like 0.025, I think, something along those lines for visual novels. It depends. Some companies pay more, others pay less. But it's around those numbers, and it was really high pay. I could have done well with that, but it is what it is. It's whatever. It happens.
Also, about having multiple members on a team, you covered a few different roles, and to anyone who's not familiar with translation projects and all the people involved, can you describe the whole process and how many people need to be involved instead of just one guy translating it?
Okay, so it depends on how complex you want to make the process, but I'll explain it if it was like a perfect scenario in which I translate, then someone looks over my translation for translation mistakes called TLC. However, that role is currently non-existent in my team for various reasons, but mainly it's because I have a lot of ego, and TLC is a role where you have to be either better or on an equal standing to the translator, and I don't think a lot of translators are at a level where I am, first of all, and those that are assholes, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess the immediate example would be that guy who translated White Album 2. Like that dude is an asshole, right? He's good at what he does, but he is an asshole. Period. Like,
Krogstad? I
yeah,
think that was
Krogstad.
his name.
Yeah,
Really?
Krogstad. Yeah, I think he's an asshole. Yeah, that's what I think. It's just like the original translator for Clover Days is the same. I think he's kind of an ass, right? But it is undeniably true that that Astro was like insanely good at translating. Like guys, I will never be as good as that guy. I can say that a lot. It's just that he was an ass, right? And I value being in a good friendly team mood rather than having people who could disrupt the flow, right? So I don't have TLC. TLC is just a conflictive role overall. Then
Okay, so it's you as the main translator, and then there's
Mhm.
theoretically a position for someone to give the script tender loving care, which basically they review the script and what you've put out. Would this person also need to know Japanese to compare?
Yeah, they
Okay.
would. TLC
So another-
requires same level of Japanese as the translator or higher, for sure.
Mm.
But again, it doesn't exist in my team. So what we have next is an editor. The editor makes my text basically sound more native because, sure, I mean, I may have a native title, but a title is one thing and then reality is another. Learning how to write like a native is hard work, and I'm actually going to writing courses as we speak. So
Nice.
it's a work in progress. But yeah, it's a work in progress, and the editor basically makes it sound better, right? Because sometimes I mix grammar, sometimes I make typos, sometimes I just use Spanish expressions that don't exist in English. It happens, right? So the editor makes sure that none of that gets through, or that should be the role at the release. And after that, there's QA.
Typically, like in author or in creating works from scratch, you have an editor who will also bounce off ideas for the plot and characterization, and they go a long way in perhaps changing the entire story from start to finish, from a first draft over all the revisions to what you put out in a final product. In this case, when you're working with a translation and you have someone else's words and story, does the editor still have any sort of feedback for the big picture sort of thing?
He does. I review his scripts after he's done. At least that's what I do now. And I think it works well for the both of us. Because the thing is, I convey one thing through my text, but then sometimes I have a vision of the game that's different, right? And then the editor does changes that changes the way I see the game, right? Or the way that the game should be showed as. And that creates issues, so of course we need to go through those. Normally there should be guides for this kind of thing, or guidelines, but the thing is, I found guidelines to be useless. Nobody looks at them. Sure, they're pretty on the outset, but nobody uses guides. And so we simply just go, we simply change things as we go, right? And maybe it has happened recently as well, for example, where I feel like a joke in the first game of the trilogy I didn't like, so I'm probably gonna change it, right, for the final release. And and I told my editor, hey, we need to change 7 jokes, and he hates me, but we need to do it, and that's how it is. Or sometimes he feels like he needs to change a section from X game or Y game, and that's how it works.
I want to reference. I have a second question in regards to what you said before, but I also have a question in regards to what we're discussing right now. So let me first finish this train of thought, the members of the team, right? And you said on a previous episode that the More of Love translation is like top quality, you like it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the contributing factors of that translation was a phenomenal job when it comes to image editing, because I believe so. I think they really took care of all those images in More of Love and redrew it in English. And on top of that, you, as a reader, have the ability to choose either the original Japanese or the newly recreated English ones. So what's your thoughts about the image editing as a role?
Oh, it's super important. I mean, it's funny that you say that, because image editors are saints in disguise. That specifically for Moblab, I actually know the guy. We talk quite a bit. The guy who did the images, he happens to be, I think he helps with translation now, in fact. But that guy alone did thousands of images in a span of a month to make for a deadline of that game, of the first ones, right, and the trilogy in general. And it was it's a lot of work, dude. Especially if you don't have original assets like he did. He was given like non-original assets, so he had to clean a lot of shit, and you can imagine how hard the work is. Yeah. Although image editors are a role that in fan translations it's like I don't gonna say it's the easiest role, but definitely the most easygoing, because you have your deadline is whatever time it takes for the people who take care of the text to do shit, right? And that's a lot of time. It could be a year, it could be a year and a half, 2 years, you know. So you can, and once you're done, right? There's little else you can do for the team, which is why it's hard to have committed people do those kinds of jobs, because, you know, if they're doing nothing for months on end, then obviously they grow bored and disappear eventually. It is what it is.
My thoughts, that feels a lot like having an image editor on the team is kind of a luxury in a sense, because when I think of Muv-Love's translation, you know, obviously I don't know Japanese and I'm not aware of the Japanese script or any of the changes. All I can say is that Muv-Love trilogy with the official translation, it read so smoothly. So much of the character dialogue felt lively and they all bounced off each other. And that's a huge case of what I would praise about its writing. I wouldn't immediately think of the CG imagery edits. I mean, they basically just took some scenes where it was like, it said English pow instead of, you know, the kanji for pow, or like hitting something. And it's like, no offense, but that's not really high up on my terms of how good a translation is. And on the other hand, you have something like, what was it, Chaos Child or Noah, where like there were a lot of CGs where like it was of scientific reports and whatnot that had important text on it, and it was written in Japanese, hard-coded onto the CG. And one of the sticking points for how, I guess, lackluster the official translation was is that they just had English like copy-pasted underneath those lines, and it looked very amateur.
I mean, sometimes companies just don't have the means. Even I've it's been so many times where I come across where I talk with X company about X piece of media, right? Let's put it that way. And I asked for original assets and they lost them, right? Or they just don't have them anymore. Or I don't know, X, Y, or Z. It happens more often than you would believe. That's what I'm gonna say, right? It's normal. It's a normal thing. So there's just a lot of work involved, especially if you're doing the work solo, right? Which is, and Muv-Love's work was done mostly by 2 people.
Dang.
Right? And like the image editor, sure, was there an editor and a QA team? Yes. And I'm not saying that their work was nothing, of course, but the translator of that trilogy carried almost all of it. Like most of the text you read is very lightly edited, you know, to the point of almost nothing. It's original translation, like raw shit. Like that's how good he is, right? That's how insane Evan is. But Evan is an exception to a rule. I wouldn't say he's like the normal thing for sure.
Okay.
I wonder,
we've kind of gotten sidetracked a little. Just I before we go any further, I did want to ask you to finish up, you know, the roles on the translation team. You've talked about now like your main translator, and you've got editors and the image editors. Are there any other positions?
I mean, QAs, I guess, to check the editing and give a last pass to the text before release. Basically just small typos, maybe errors in a game we can report, conflict, you know, maybe sometimes they discuss lines with the editor, they think this line would be better said this other way, that kind of stuff. It's a hard role, actually. Finding people who are gifted for that is difficult. And then I guess luxury roles, again, video editor, sometimes the openings, you can add subs or translate the things in the openings to English, but that is insane levels of luxury. Like I've only had one person do that for me, right? And he's in a team right now, and he he is working on the openings of our games little by little, but it's something I don't rush, and it's something I would never expect to have in the first place. So it's always good to have, but it's just little extras, video editor, image editor. Like sometimes teams don't find image editors, right? That's how it works. Yeah, the priorities of what were luxury roles before have changed so much. Before, luxury role was translator, actually. There were barely any translators around, and now it feels like translators. There's so many, and there's so little talent when it comes to editing or QA, because most is poached to companies nowadays. Like editors are hired really, really quickly.
Oh, wow.
I wanted.
So yeah, those are the roles.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what Tauros you said about the editing, that you haven't felt Movlov's image editing that impressive, right? And to be frank,
no, I didn't. It wasn't that it wasn't impressive. It's just you made it sound like image editing was a huge reason for its translation success, and I thought it was really only a small part of that.
You know what? Maybe not. I don't know. Title I've read on a fan translation and on official release, so I could compare, was Sengoku Runs. And to be frank, a lot of UI in the fan translation was left, in Japanese, garbled to some extent. And I have to say, even though it didn't strike me immediately, holy hell, the official release was so much more professional, just because the entire UI has been cleaned up. And I wonder if you had any experience like that, Barry, with a title that had looked poorer before and cleaned up after.
Majoko Nikki, I guess it's like the immediate idea I get. That title had a almost full Japanese UI, and the way they did it in English was really well done. We without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and maybe this is not something that you think actively about, but in retrospective, in my opinion, this elevates the translation to next.
I guess when it comes to fan translations, expecting everything to be done is a luxury that people believe should be normal, but it isn't. Like it just speaks volumes on how we have very, very high standards. I think we have very high standards on what constitutes a decent visual translation, and then your average light novel translation is some. Okay, I'm gonna be. I'll try not to be mean, but it's some garbage from GPT or Google Translate.
I feel you.
Before we move forward through that, I wanted to go back, and I wanted to ask you a second question in regards to what you started episode with, because you said you really wanted to be a personal translator for insert your favorite writer, author, creator, and I was sitting here thinking, wait just a goddamn minute. I remember Pablo C expressed similar sentiment. He liked that author, talking about title he recently read, that he feels motivated to translate his works. And before that, Wailing Guignol was also something that he liked that author for and really wanted to translate. Do you feel like, Barry, it's common for those fan translators to start with, okay, I like this author, let me be the savior to spread the message?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know what other authors for that these people work on, but Kinugasa is a prolific author right now. He's one of the most popular Japanese authors of anime media, right? I mean, we all know Classroom of the Elite, right? So Classroom of the Elite came way before, like the translation came way before Akatsuki, right? And would I translate for Kinugasa now? No, I definitely would not. I definitely grew tired of that guy, especially because he's definitely fell off. Like he watered down so much ever since Akatsuki. I feel like when he did visual novels, he was this kind of guy who had certain ideas, and he would definitely express these ideas through the games he worked on. And now he became so mainstream that he definitely, like, you read some of his works, and if you are someone who has read everything he's done, you feel like he's watered it down quite a bit. Like he's not the same guy. But yeah, I would say love for the author comes after reading it, because before, what draws you in is the art, right? I think art is everything when it comes to visual novel. Like if I don't like the pretty pictures, I'm sorry, but I will not read it, even if it's the best visual novel that ever existed in the world. So yeah.
Priorities. So what might be our last question for you today? What is the future for Daybreak translations? I mean, not just for the individuals on the team and yourself, but just for the fan translation scene in general, if you want to share anything about that.
Oh, well, that's a big question. Well, I mean, for Daybreak, it's quite simple, actually. I'll probably finish Akatsuki in a week or two, Akatsuki 3. So that means the trilogy and my original purpose is done. But I already committed to other games like Magikoi, A Plus, and Tsujido version Road. So I'll probably do those over the course of this year and the next. Maybe this.
I'm sorry. When you said you're committed to those projects, like officially, or just a promise to yourself and others, or?
Oh, a fan translation. I already said that I wanted to work on those things after Akatsuki. I tended to do that. I said I would work on Genido, so I did. I said I would work on Paimen, so I did. And the same goes with Tsujido and Magikoi. I actually I got flamed on Reddit in a fucking thread, I remember, for saying that I called dibs on Magikoi. Oh, that was funny.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Flamed on Reddit, whatever.
People calling me childish or whatever. I'm like, dude, whatever. I mean, there's been worse cases. I've been poached projects before, fan translation projects before, but that's talk for another day. Going back on topic though, I will finish those games over the course of this and next year, most likely. Maybe more. It depends on how my life affects me in general. And then I had two options. Either I was thinking of taking in donations in exchange of continuing, because I feel like, I mean, I'm 25. I already have my life and my priorities, and I have work, and I'm moving to my own house soon and shit like that. So it's a lot of stuff to think about, and I don't have time to dedicate to do things for free, right? Especially because I don't feel like the reward is worth the effort. Like, what's the reward? People talking about you on some obscure forum, and most of the talk is negative as well, right? Because there's like a big push against my team and my work as well, from people who just like to say that I'm just a bad translator, which is, I mean, it's their prerogative, of course, but I don't think
criticism from people who don't know what they're talking about, that sort of thing.
Maybe they know, but it's just their opinion, and maybe it's just your opinion and not like a factual thing either, right? Like, there's people who know Japanese who criticize me, right? It's just that it's their opinion.
Exactly, and they're not the problem, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know. The problem is that it's a lot of time sink, and I don't think the reward is worth the effort, right? So I was thinking of donations, but at the same time, it's like, if I take donations, is it a fan translation anymore? And then what if I sell out one of my projects? Taking donations would have been like memeing on the donators, right? And I don't know. I don't release monthly as well. I'm a guy that releases stuff. I work on long games, so of course I release things on a once a year basis, right, or twice a year, if we're lucky. Like, I think 2021 had 3 releases. Last year had 1, and this year we'll probably see 2 with some luck, or maybe 1. We'll see. Like, it really depends on many things. But yeah, I don't see a future apart from that, because all of the games that I like are either too long, have been worked on, or they belong to series that would mentally force me to maybe work on sequels that I don't want to work on, right? Because it's too much work. And yeah, it's very tiresome. Although in an ideal scenario, I would like to continue, for many years to come and see what happens. But there's not a lot of content left that I would like to work on. Maybe Tsukiyoru, Tsuryotsu. Let's call it that way. Tsuryotsu, because it has like 5 or 6 games, which is like insane. That would keep me busy for many, many years.
Goodness.
all of the August games are translated now, so there's no hope there. I don't like Akabi's games anymore. All of the good ones are translated. Maybe Crystalia, but Crystalia is the kind of company that will definitely be localized eventually. Like, there's no way that company is not localized at some point. So I'm not even gonna try. And I don't know. I've had people tell me that I should just shift to Minatosoft games, but honestly, I don't think Minatosoft nowadays is a good company. I think they produce really shitty games. So, so I'm left with like nothing I like so far. And all of the other games that I like, I'm probably pending for a job contract to do them. You know, like Schwarzesmarken. So that's a maybe, but might not happen. But I'm cut from that because I have relations with the company that produces Muv-Luv now, so I kind of cannot, do anything related to Muv-Luv, even if I like it.
I see. Yep, it's complicated. There's a lot of things pulling you in many different directions, huh?
Oh yeah. So that's for Daybreak translations, and then for fan translations, I don't know. I feel like I feel fan translation has gotten better over the years. I see people are more skilled and are less prone to abandon projects. However, I feel like things are getting increasingly toxic overall towards fan translators, towards professionals, and fans are just getting really toxic lately. I get it. There's a lot of political memes going on about localization, and it spills onto us, right? And I feel like that discourages people from trying to do things, or maybe we are reverting into like on the original state of fan translation, which is you are this anonymous person that has like a very obscure website where you post progress and then one day you post a patch and disappear. That kind of stuff. Like the age of personalities died with Triplicate, I think. Triplicate, it was the translator for several Tomeworks games like Hatsukoi 1-1, Hoshiori Yume Mirai, and Giniro Haruka. Okay.
Wow.
So I think he was the last big personality. And once he kicked everyone and abandoned translation, things have been decaying quite fast. People are just used to very good stuff, and I think they don't realize that they get it very good right now, right? And whereas I see GPT is definitely going to make a. Well, it definitely already has with that Sugoi translator, which I find abhorrent, but if people want to read dog shit, then it's they can do whatever the fuck they want. It's not my problem. But yeah, we see a lot of machine translators taking donations as well. It's so disgusting. Like it just makes me mad, really mad. Then there's translators who decide to do games that are out of their scope of skill, like the guy doing Chushingura, or the guy doing Sakuuta, or the guy doing Sakutoki, for example.
Oh my goodness, the Sakuuta thing.
Yeah. I mean, that guy worked on. I think it's the same guy that worked on Junigatsu no Tenshi or something like that. I think that was the name of the game. I don't think. I'm sorry, but that game. I'm not gonna say it's the most difficult game in the world, but I don't think someone a random like him should do it. I think a professional should, especially since the author stated publicly that he wanted that game to be licensed one day. But well. Again, like it just drives me insane. Or the guy doing Sakura no Toki, for example, he says he's a professional. Maybe he could be. Like it doesn't inspire me, especially when he made a post talking about how he's the right guy to translate Sakutoki because he half finished a degree in philosophy, and that somehow gives him the authority to understand. It's so weird. I don't know. I just don't like how people believe they can do shit. Right, like without thinking twice, even though clearly it is out of the scope. Like I cannot wait to see some dirtbag trying to do, I don't know, Senshinkan, what's the name of this game? KKK, Oretsuba, like those are like, or Albatross, for example. Those games are so difficult. Like I don't think any translator in this scene can actually do them. Not even Koei Steel, which is probably one of the best translators out there. Period. Right? He's the guy who did Grisaya, the Grisaya trilogy. I think he's one of the best translators, right? Along with Evan, although Evan doesn't do visual novels anymore, right? But Koei Steel is definitely one of the best. And I don't think, in fact, he said publicly that he doesn't think he has the skill to do Oretsuba, right? And that game, I cannot wait for someone to start doing that game one day. It's gonna happen. I just know it. And whatever comes out of that is gonna be so wrong. So yeah, it's just hubris. It's just misplaced hubris, right? Because before people thought better about what to tackle, and nowadays they don't. That at least that's what I feel. So will the fan translation scene die? No. It's gonna get more rogue, more 4chan-ish. I think more stealth releases, especially since companies are now more aggressive, sending cease and desists, that kind of stuff. But it'll still exist. Obviously, gradually for lower tier games. I'm gonna call them lower tier games, but it's basically games that are not from major companies or have a lot of repercussion. But it's still gonna happen, and I mean, with or without us, it'll continue. I'm just hoping to leave a mark of some sort, and that's my only aspiration with this team at this point. Because I mean, it's not like I said before, the age of personalities is gone, right? The age of big teams that will be remembered, like staircase subs. Like, okay, maybe not a lot of people know about staircase subs, but staircase subs was this group made by Insem. They were the original translators of Draco Riot before Oxford Coma subs took on the project and then sold out to Sekai and then to Nekonian, right? And sure, maybe Insem wasn't a good translator. I think he was on the same level as Six Reg. He was like pathetically bad. But if you ask old timers about who Insem is, I think most will say yes. I think most will tell you who that they know who that guy was, at least to some degree. So that age of knowing who was who and that shit is gone, dude. Like it's long gone. So now we just there's just translators who are expendable, and we keep translating until we fizzle out, and then another one will take our place. That's how it works. So I think that's what's gonna happen.
Another one will take the place? Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, oh my goodness, thank you for elaborating so much on the topic.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I went for too long, didn't I?
Oh no, not at all. You're our guest here, dude. We wanted to bring you in because we wanted to hear your thoughts about this stuff, and thank you so much. And I hope everyone listening also enjoyed hearing, I guess you could say, the backstage view of what goes on in visual novel translations.
Yeah, the future seems murky, but for the present, thanks all listeners for listening in, and VNture out.
VNture out.